Hello everyone, welcome to my Shadows Awakening review video. In this video, I will go through the pros, cons, and neutrals of Shadows Awakening. There will be spoilers, as always, so if you're looking for a spoiler-free review, this is not it. So, without further ado, let's start with a short description of Shadows Awakening. Shadows Awakening is an isometric ARPG, similar in style to Diablo, which is, I'm guessing, an isometric game that everybody knows. So you kill things, you pick up their loot, you decide what to use and what not to use, you level up, yada yada. Basic, simple, very straightforward in that area. Now, Shadows Awakening has a slight difference from most other games of the same genre, which is that you play as a demon called the Devourer, or rather, you play as a Devourer. He has an actual name, which I don't remember, and you consume souls of other beings. By consuming their souls, you gain their power, or rather, you turn them into puppets and can use them as you please. So you essentially gain their power in practice. And of course, the game has a ton of of puppets. Let me see. I think like 15 or something. That sounds about right. Some puppets are mutually exclusive. This is to add replay value. So the decisions you make can shut you out from certain puppets, or open up avenues to the puppets. It all depends on the decisions you make. So that's the description. Now let's get to the pros. The game's concept is interesting. It got me, someone who doesn't really appreciate isometric RPGs, to purchase the game and try it out. I found that the puppet mechanic was interesting, although it has some drawbacks which I'll mention in a bit. The story is decent, I guess. I mean, it can get a bit confusing. Like, why would Krenz just summon a demon to deal with the issues and then do nothing forever? Krenz is the guy who summons the Devourer and gives him the ability to possess many souls. Thing is, Krenz then does nothing throughout the game. He shows up at certain points, but he's mostly just the narrator, and that's it. The story, there are some interesting story mechanics here. The Devourer changes and grows with your choices. So, for instance, in a certain part, I was able to either claim that a puppet was my own, that I fully controlled him, which I'm guessing would have increased the Devourer's malice, or give the puppet autonomy, let him say that no, he is still his own person, or wolf in that case, which I'm guessing made the Devourer more open to the idea that the puppets are also living beings and not just, puppets. So that apparently changes the ending. I'm not 100% sure that is what is claimed. I'm going to assume it's true. I just haven't experienced it for myself. Oh, to be clear, I haven't experienced it because I haven't played through the game a second time. The game boasts high replay value, not only because, choices you make can grant access or remove access from certain puppets, but also because the Devourer himself changes with your decisions, which will ultimately lead to a different character for the Devourer and change the ending. Now, with the pros out of the way, we get to the neutral parts. Well, part, really. It's not exactly clear what the choices you make actually do, even after the fact. That's why I'm not 100% sure what would have happened if I picked a different route, and even, you know, with the wolf that I mentioned, and even my choice, my idea about what happened because I chose that path is 100% speculative because the game doesn't explicitly tell you. There's a stat sheet, I guess, that you can look at which shows the Devourer's personality, but I'm not 100% sure how that works either. In fact, I don't even remember how I managed to access it the first time. Well, moving right ahead, we get to the cons. So, the combat is highly repetitive. You have access to 3 skills, and you just, you know, swap between puppets depending on the resistances of the enemies, and use their spells, basic attacks, basic attacks. I mean, it's an isometric ARPG. They're all like this, from what I understand. So yeah, not much to say there. There's another issue. So I found some elemental staffs for Evia, the Daughter of Fire, who was the first puppet I chose. Alright, the first choice is basically Pokemon, you know, fire, water, grass. In this case it's Fire Mage, Warrior, and Ranger, I think. So yeah, same principle. Yeah, so I found some staffs for her along the way. But the issue is, for instance, I found an Earth Staff, deals poison damage in an area where all the enemies are resistant to poison. Found a Fire Staff in an area where all the enemies are resistant to fire. Found an Air Staff, you get the point. And these staffs were better than what she had, but because of the resistance, I mean, it doesn't feel good to equip them. Because even if the damage is actually increased, seeing the resisted all the time gets annoying. Now, the biggest con of all, biggest drawback in the game is the absolutely horrible, torturous map design. Like, first of all, the least complaint I have in this area is the fact that in a given area, the maps all look alike. So if you're in the catacombs, for instance, everywhere looks the same. If you're in the desert, everywhere looks the same. And stuff like that. The cities, to be fair, the cities are incredible. You get the feeling that, you know, people actually live there. I thought that was incredible. But yeah. Another complaint, so we're just going in increasing order of how annoying these things were to me, these parts of the map design. It's not exactly clear which areas you can and can't walk on or through. I was always looking at the minimap instead of actually looking at the game because I wasn't sure, can I walk here, can't I? That actually led to a lot of parts where I just kind of bumped into things, so yeah. The characters are too slow to move around the maps efficiently. Like my boyfriend watched my Let's Plays and he said that the game, it just looked like I was walking around, casting the same spells and then moving on. And mostly just walking around. And always very, very slowly. Which I completely agree with. So, yeah, that's another thing. The combat is... No, I think I already mentioned that, the repetitive combat. Well, there's another issue. Now, sometimes, this happens specifically in the sewers, I shouldn't say sometimes. In the sewers, there's a part where you're in a room with a locked door and a lever. So I thought to myself, hey, you know what, maybe if I activate this lever, it'll open the locked door. You'd think so, right? I mean, that's game design 101. But no. The lever opens a door on an upper floor, which takes several seconds to get to, which has another lever, which then opens the door in the room I was initially in. So all in all, I'd say I wasted at least a minute of just sheer walking. I know a minute doesn't sound like much, but in an action game, a minute of doing nothing except walking is just jarring. Very, very jarring, very irritating, and I don't know why the hell somebody would do that. And finally, perhaps the biggest annoyance of all, the fire tunnels. These are areas where you pull a lever. So, well, first, the area is just a bunch of flamethrowers sticking out of the wall in succession, in a row. So you pull a lever, first flamethrower disables, you take a step forward, stop because the next flamethrower is still on. Next flamethrower disables, you take another step, this flamethrower you just walked through turns back on, then the next flamethrower turns off, you take another step, and so on. And Jesus Christ, how much time did I waste just going through those things? Who in God's name designed that thing? I just can't even imagine why someone would do that, if not to artificially extend the playtime of the game. Well, yeah, so that's my biggest complaint. So, to summarize, pros: interesting concept, good story, interesting story mechanics, high replay value. Neutral, it's not clear what the choices actually do. Cons: poor map design, limited number of equipped spells, repetitive combat, and elemental weapons are usually found in areas where enemies are immune or resistant to that type of damage. Now, all in all, I would say that Shadows Awakening gets a 6.5 out of 10. This score is difficult for me to give because I think it's based mostly on my my issues with games of this genre, which is, you know, too much loot, just too much crap, too much trash that you have to sift through and sell. The fact that you can't move the camera, hence the isometric thing, which can make it very difficult to actually know what the hell you're doing. But also mostly the map design and the repetitive combat. So yeah, 6.5 out of 10. I would say that if this game had decent map design, it could very easily be an 8 out of 10. But the missing 2 to get to a perfect game is just because I'm not a big fan of isometric ARPGs, and honestly this was a purchase I regretted only because of that. I want to be clear about this. If you like isometric RPGs, you don't mind the grinding, the endless trash drops, you will definitely like Shadows Awakening. Well, apart from the map design, which I think is a bit universal. But if you're like me and you're not into isometric RPGs, even the interesting and unique mechanics of this game won't save it. So, that was my review for Shadows Awakening. I want to apologize for missing the usual date. Well, usual, which I always miss, but you get the point. Props to my editor, who worked very hard on this review. So, as always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again next time.